Hello, everyone. Today we have a very exciting guest, someone who I have known for many, many years and have respected highly as a healer. It's Peter Fairfield. He's an acupuncturist, a healer, and medical intuitive with over 45 years of clinical experience using many forms of healing and as a national lecturer. Peter did long retreats in China and the Himalayas and has studied in many countries researching the basis for an East West model of psychophysiology that combines the energetic basis of Asian medical and spiritual traditions with modern neuro, bio, and quantum science. Peter founded a California approved acupuncture school and has worked in clinics and hospitals worldwide. He has given almost 100 healing and spiritually based seminars, taught in many acupuncture graduate programs, and has studied the structure and physiology of spiritual development from many systems for over 45 years. It's a great pleasure to have Peter today, and I've been looking forward to this interview for quite a while. Welcome, Peter.
Well, thank you so much, Romarishi. It's kind of fun. I feel like we're just sitting in our living room talking here. Boy, after that introduction, I want to meet me.
Yes, I'm very happy to do this interview because I know there are many people out there who could benefit from the type of healing practices that you do. And I think you're very unique. I don't think I've run across anyone in my life that so fully combines Eastern and Western modalities. How did you get interested in what you do?
Well, like probably many people listening to this, I had some profound spiritual experiences as a little boy. Um, Before my dad, there were 13 generations of ministers in my family, which I've started to understand and tune into. So there was this spiritual impetus in me. When I was a little boy, I wanted to be a monk and a doctor.
Ah,
And I didn't know either. And so somehow I had learning difficulties when I was a kid. It was very difficult for me to study. I had a lot of anxiety and tension, and so after I got through high school and in the midst of college, I started to study meditation and Qigong and energetic practices and Chinese medicine. And after I kind of got myself cleared out, I went back to study the sciences, which gave me a very different view rather than learning the details. As in oral medicine, we would look at the big picture, then we get smaller. And usually the Western sciences, we look at the small picture and get bigger. So it gave me a little different idea on how to integrate them. And my my spiritual path, the first stage was to find an openness in my own heart. Because I was very shut down emotionally. That was my karma to learn that. I know what it's like to be anxious, suicidal, depressed. I spent the first 30 years of my life wondering what I was doing. But as my spiritual practice started to work, and as my training and my own therapy and Chinese medicine and other therapy started to work, and my own heart became open, I realized that that is the primary wound of the world is that we forget our hearts. And in Chinese medicine, the heart is really what connects our ancestors with our spiritual self. The heart is the first organ really to appear in the embryo. Um, I think by the third or the sixth week of gestation, there's a little tiny heart beating individual red cells. It's the first organ to appear. And energetically, it connects us spiritually, and then it connects to our ancestors. So that turned out to be a very profound and deep study.
hmm. How did you get interested in Chinese medicine and specifically acupuncture?
Well, it was funny. I was living in Santa Barbara many years ago, and I had been living in a spiritual community, and we did a lot of massage, and so I started to get tuned in a little bit. Then when this is in the early 70s, the 70s, and I started to take classes in acupressure and energy healing and all that kind of stuff. But I kept praying for my work. I kept praying, okay, universe, please, show me my work, show me what I should do in this world, how I can help myself and help the world. If I have a gift, let me express it through something. One day I woke up and every single cell in my body said I had to study acupuncture. Well,
Wow.
there were almost no acupuncturists anywhere then. I barely knew what it was. I think I'd had one acupuncture treatment from some guy in Chinatown who burned some marks on my back, and I screamed, and he ran and took the needles out and pushed me out the door. So, but I had this inner guidance, and it's funny. I've always like used bookstores, and that day I went to a used bookstore in Santa Barbara that I'd been to the day before, and when I walked in, there was a stack of books on the counter that somebody had just brought in. That
Wow.
was the 5 good books in English on acupuncture. So the universe really supported that vision that I had, and I I was stubborn. I had this. I was given a feeling of what the lineage of Chinese medicine should look like, and I actually turned down some teachers and some paths until I finally discovered a viewpoint of Chinese medicine that was very spiritual, very deep. The we think about China and acupuncture, but mainland China went through a very difficult political time, and in Chinese medicine, we want the person to evolve, not just healing, but we also want to open up their wounds and open up their deep places and connect them to the world that they live in, and find a path and an action. And in those days in China, it was the state that was evolving. So the kind of Chinese medicine and acupuncture that was coming out was a different reality than what I was looking for. There were some very interesting strains that came out of Japan and Korea and even Europe, because acupuncture went to Europe in the 1700s, went to France. The king of France at that time was slept with so many women and ate so much food and somehow the Chinese doctor kept him alive until the French were impressed that he could do all that and still be healthy. So that actually made acupuncture famous. And actually, acupuncture came to the Carolinas in the later 1700s
Wow.
from the French.
Wow.
And then, of course, it came back during the gold rush in the 1800s. There was a very famous Chinese doctor in Oregon. Anyway, that's kind of off the track, but that's there's a rich history, and somehow through my prayers and my stubbornness, I was guided to a place where I could fulfill that moment that I woke up that morning in Santa Barbara.
Wow. And did you actually go to China to study?
Eventually, I did. After my grandfather was actually a missionary in China.
Oh,
My dad and aunts and uncles were born in China, and matter of fact, my grandmother knew Madame Chiang Kai-shek after they went to Taiwan,
ah,
and so I always wanted to go to China, but I had actually been. I had graduated. I'd been practicing. I actually had a practice in Sonoma back then, and it wasn't until one day I woke up and I had a nice house, beautiful girlfriend, great dog, great practice, but something was missing. There was an empty place in my life, and so again I made some prayers, and I decided that I would go to China to study. And so I had some friends of friends, and I set it up to study in Shanghai in exchange for teaching English at the Shanghai Academy of Traditional Medicine, the Shanghai Junyuan, which is kind of
oh,
the Harvard of Chinese medicine. So very respected. So I gave up my practice in Sonoma, went down to Monterey, and rented a little house. And I had been studying for a couple months down there. And one day I was still making prayers, just show me. And one day when I was meditating after class, a face appeared to me, turned sideways. And I thought to myself, wonder what that is. I'm not going to think about it. Maybe it's just stuff in the mind. The next day I got a letter saying that all my plans to go to China were over, that they had made some changes. So I decided to go to Taiwan. I had some friends in Kaohsiung. So about 6 weeks later, I got a call. Let me back up. The face I saw was Asian, turned out to be Tibetan, and again I had this ache for something spiritual, and
Mm.
I wasn't sure I was going to get that in studying Chinese medicine. So anyway, one day I got a call in Shanghai in Kaohsiung. Do you want to meet some lamas? Yes. I gave him the address. He laughed. 5 minutes later, there was an old taxi pulled up. This old Chinese man in this silk Tibetan outfit. I'd never seen anybody just like that before. And we drove 1 block away.
1 block.
1 block away because there was two lamas visiting from Nepal. And I was staying at a friend's house who I'd known for 10 years and hadn't seen for 10 years.
Wow.
1 block away, we went into the house. And the bottom floor of some of the older Taiwanese houses, kind of like a garage. But on the desk was a picture of a lama, but he had glasses and a headdress. And I thought to myself, that looks like the face. I went, no, 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 no. They all look alike, which don't mean to be racist, but that was the thought in my mind.
Yeah.
So we went upstairs, and there were two lamas from Nepal, and on the table next to them was a picture of the face that I had seen
Oh,
in meditating several months before in Monterey. So I said, I know this guy. Who is it? And they said, it's their teacher. So I had already enrolled in a Chinese medical college in the Kaohsiung, a new one. I was even on Taiwanese TV. But at first I said, yeah, I'd like to go. They asked me to go with them. So he ended up to be my teacher. He never accepted a Westerner before. There's lots of stories about that. That's probably a different tape. And so I began to be connected to this very high vibrated Tibetan lamas. And I had a practice in a town of very spiritual people that came from all over the world to study Buddhism,
oh,
but not just as a theory, but also to be immersed in the vibration. In the town of Bodanath, there's a stupa, which looks like a giant spark plug, which radiates this enlightened energy. So just being in that field and being with all these lamas, it was very profound. And then in Chinese medicine, when we take the pulse, we can feel the organs, but we can also feel destiny and karma and things like that. So I was able to begin to take the pulse of these great lamas, mostly from the Nyingma Kagyu tradition, but some of the other traditions.
wow.
And it started to imprint on me unconsciously what all the practices were doing. The very first time I took my teacher's pulse, I had an ego about it. I thought I was good at pulses. I took his pulse, and there was a quality that I couldn't even think about. It just took my mind and went poof. And sometimes I'd feel it in other lamas. Occasionally I felt it in the Westerners. And several years later, there was a great lama that came to teach, and I was back for the summer in San Francisco. And he was just this old lama from this esoteric part of Tibet, and nobody knew what he was saying, but he was kind of turned into light, just his face appeared. And so he was actually staying at a friend's place in Oakland. So I went there a few days later, and he grabbed me and said, "You're my student." Put hands on my head. It felt like fire hose of chi was going in me. And I said, "Thanks." Kind of an understatement. And I said, "What can I do for you?" And he said, "Take my pulse." And when I took his pulse, I realized the quality that I felt in all those other pulses. It
Wow.
made my mind go blank. It was the quality of enlightenment,
Wow.
which is the essential Buddha nature that's in every one of us.
Sure.
And so since then, I've realized that my job is to uncover the obstacles, our karma, our karmic trauma, our karmic lessons, our karmic misconceptions, our karmic, whatever it is, it's not all negative, to uncover this basic essence that's in all of us. You don't have to call it a Buddha nature if you're not Buddhist, but it's this place inside us where either God lives or the universe speaks to us. That you can define it in any language or any vocabulary. And so that's what really changed me. And that changed. It gave me a different perspective. It turned a light on all of the theories that I ever learned about Chinese medicine or spirituality. And I've lived in quite a few ashrams and spiritual communities, and that up till then, I got 4 planets of Gemini, so there's always a few streams in my history. But so that moment was a defining moment and shifted how I thought, how I practiced. And so from that moment, it changed things. Now, my interest had always been in emotions. Mozart could play the piano at 3. Even as a little boy, I understood emotional patterns. I could see the patterns in people. I had no idea what I felt personally, but I could see these patterns in other people. So that was always a stream. And as my spiritual understanding came, and I started to look at the physiology of Asian medical systems, and I learned more about quantum physics and the quantum reality, which is very close to some of the advanced teachings of many spiritual disciplines, particularly the Tibetans, and it began to gel.
Mhm.
So when I work with people now, um, it basically just let the dust settle, and I just see them clearly, and I begin to see the truth of them, and I also see these little bubbles and clouds and knots that obstruct their expression of their happiness, their
Mm.
bliss, their knowledge, their expression of being into the world. And so I guess that's sort of that's kind of who I am and how I got there and what I do.
Right. So even from a young age in childhood, you were very intuitive and you were very empathetic, and you could feel the emotions in people.
What,
And then,
wasn't so much it wasn't so much the emotions, because you have to have a heart open to feel the emotions. And
uh-huh,
I was very shut down, but I saw the dynamics. I saw that this person was this way and this person was that way,
right.
and somehow those different ways got along, and sometimes they didn't. And I saw that they came from somewhere in the person. It wasn't until I really opened up my own heart and got my own feelings that I began to understand how the emotions fit into that.
Hmm.
In Chinese medicine, Tibetan medicine, Vedic medicine, all this, there's a physiology of the emotions and personality, and that's really been one of my main interests, is the physiology of personality, and how to free up the essential being so that their expression is authentic and not based on trauma and resistance and conceptual misunderstanding and all that.
Right. About 2 months ago, I had a healing session with you, and you did acupuncture on me and took my pulses, and it was a very profound experience. I've had acupuncture from many people in my life, and that session I had with you was extremely profound. Can you describe how you um, treat people who come to you, what you do, and how you are benefiting them?
So you're saying I should have charged you double, right?
Yeah,
See, consciousness, acupuncture can be just a needle in the point. Okay, I think most people by now have seen the maps of the lines on the body and the
sure.
face and all that. So there's a very superficial way of doing acupuncture where you're this point for headache and this point for that, and then you begin to go a little deeper and you see that this point works on these systems, and those systems create certain effects, and so you balance that. And but there's another way where if I get into a pure state of being in my awareness and I connect that awareness to the person, then something deeper happens. The needles are I mean, I'm still stimulating the points, but I'm also giving a much deeper message to whoever bodies I'm working on, so that something deeper and more profound can happen.
Mhm.
So it's simpler. It looks the same as you're watching, but the vibration, the feeling, the essence that I hope gets transmitted is very different. That's the idea, because I've done it for 45 years now. I've taught hundreds of seminars. I was the acupuncturist at uh, Esalen. I've worked in many spiritual retreats. I toured with Pink Floyd as their acupuncturist.
Yeah,
I, I,
really.
I, I've worked in, as you said, hospitals all over the world with addicts and psychiatric people, and I've worked with people with. I haven't worked with a person with 72 personalities.
Mhm.
I should have charged her 72 times. But I learned more from her than she got from me. It was
Wow.
fascinating. I really understood the personality from working with this person. So really, it's just a matter of, life should be happy. Life, not every day, not, but we're here. Bliss is a path to enlightenment. We're not here to suffer. Our suffering points out the places where we're still holding on, we're still tight, we're still resistant, and our disease process is an expression of the knots that we have in our awareness, and
Mm.
sometimes you bang yourself in the remember you got the used to call it the funny bone. I don't know if they still call it that, but you can be upset in the kitchen, you bang your elbow, and all of a sudden you start laughing. And so
Mhm.
a lot of times when we bang ourselves, the body has great intelligence trying to heal itself. Many of our diseases, including viruses and colds and flus, can actually make us better. I got very sick about 2 weeks ago, very intense days. But every few hours, I would have a clear moment, and something would get done. I would do a project that I've been trying to do for a year. So this deep flu or whatever it was also reorganizing my body. And
Mm.
this thing, the intelligence of disease, the benefits of illness, this is something that's not really talked about, and it's sorely missed.
Uh, I'd like to tell people about your book, Deep Happy. This is really an excellent book, and it's called Deep Happy: How to Get There and Always Find Your Way Back. Really an excellent book, and I highly recommend it. So, Peter, I'm so happy to know you. You're an amazing healer. Uh,
Yeah, coming from you, that means a lot.
well, thank you. You are. You really are. And you've had a lot of experience around the world. The fact that you actually gave acupuncture treatments to many of the highest Tibetan lamas of the Nyingma and Kagyu lineages is very, uh, very profound that you were able to do that and that
It
you
was
had
amazing
that
because
experience. You had that experience when you took their pulses, that you could feel that emptiness, that enlightened consciousness.
well,
I
not
really,
just that,
yeah, go ahead.
it's not just that, but there are many esoteric practices. Tibetans have a whole, whole volumes of what they do. I've also spent a lot of time in the Qigong traditions, the Taoist traditions, a certain extent the Sufi traditions, some of the Hindu traditions. So my interest really is, what do those practices do to the personality? What's the relationship of personality to spiritual development? What practices to do when? And what really works for who, as far as the practices go.
Mm,
And then I've been able to simplify that in my own mind. So when I do an acupuncture treatment, I'm often pulling from some of that. Now, in the last few years, actually for the last 15 years, I've been working with people on the phone all over the world.
mm,
And so I was a biofeedback therapist at UCLA and Mass Rehab in Boston. And I was actually living with a Taoist priest in the mountains of Malibu as a biofeedback therapist at UCLA. And, so we were studying all the inner workings and all these inner meditation techniques. Then I would go to the office in Beverly Hills or UCLA, and I would hook people up, and I could begin to. We were doing so much intense practice, I could kind of run their energy with my awareness and watch the needles change, and it really taught me how people can have so much effect over their own body, their own mind, their own consciousness, their own spirituality, just by going into their body. So that's the work I do with people on the phone. I really think I can do pretty much what I do in acupuncture on the phone to people, and sometimes more.
okay.
Consciousness creates biology. Now, I think people know what visualization is, but when we when we put our awareness on various places in the body, we begin to notice that sometimes we can feel it clearly. We can feel our breath. We can feel our bottom on the chair. We can feel our heartbeat sometimes. We feel a sore shoulder, whatever it is. But when we actually begin to put our consciousness in our body, that consciousness begins to wake things up and move things that are stuck. So for, I don't know, 20 some years, I've worked with the breath and the body. It's very common now. But once you begin to take the breath into the body and look for subtle somatic sensations, which is very easy, I show people how to do this on the phone. It's very much like doing acupuncture. So because I know the physiology of personality, I know the physiology of depression, anxiety, being stuck. I work with a lot of artists creatively. I work with many very high-end musicians, and because these are patterns in the body, using the breath and awareness and this whole system that I developed over 20 years, we can go into the body and open it up. It's very simple. It takes about an hour for each session, and you feel better right away, and you learn to do it yourself. So it's powerful and fun and interesting, and you can tell right away that something is happening. So,
How can people contact you?
well, I have a website. It's called oneinfiniteheart.com.
oneinfiniteheart.com.
Yeah, and so it's all there. And if they, I mean, I'm happy to, to people can call me. I live in the town of Sonoma, California, in the
Mm,
wine country, about an hour north of San Francisco. And so I do see people here in Sonoma, and I have a little place, a tiny little clinic in San Anselmo, Marin County.
mm.
And they can also call me. My number is 415-377-0862. You can email me, ompsych369 at gmail.
Sure.
And it's all on the website. And, so much can be done. You don't even have to come to see me. Like I say, I think some of my deepest work these days is on the phone. And right now I'm working with people in India. I'm working with people in Italy, France, Germany, and Ohio.
Wow. Great.
And
Well,
Thailand
I
on the phone.
really urge everyone watching this to contact Peter. Uh, he is a profound healer, and it's our pleasure to introduce people to him. Thank you, Peter, for taking the time to do this interview, and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you. And I just want people to know that I know what it is to feel crazy and to hurt, to feel off your path, to not know who you are, to wonder where the fuck my tribe is. These days it's so hard. I get that. And I can help you through that. Anyway, thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Peter.